So, kijk,
Er zijn nog on-error aan.
ja. Oké.
Judge.
We're setting things up a bit, so bear with us, please.
Yes.
Sorry for the delay. Our software decided to not work halfway through our setup process, so we're using this right now. Sorry for the inconvenience, guys.
Yes.
So anyway, why don't you start?
We are live on air, and today we have a couple of surprising topics. It's about technical stuff, a lot of audio related, but also gaming related. I think a lot of you guys are interested in today's gaming industry. It's being used as a money machine these days. I mean, there used to be this, well, so-called ambition to, well, as a child you want to create your own game, and when you play off these games you were like, well, I'm going to make the best game that ever existed.
You know what's ironic about that? EA's first game, Mule, actually has a message on the back that exactly shows that they started out with such a dream and that they tried to spread it with love. How days have changed.
I think a lot of those things work the same way. Politicians that really want the best for people, and while somewhere they got cut off or are or didn't realize that it's a game where you can't just do anything you want. I mean, sometimes it might sound as a conspiracy, but you have to consider that there's a lot of issues related to enterprises, corporations, business, and when you stomp on those toes, well, you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah, but
and the game industry works quite the same way. Billions of dollars are being made on that. That's a lot of money. People are willing to kill you for that kind of money.
yeah.
I mean, for a couple of millions they will kill you, but
it shows that in the big corporate world you have to do some pretty, well, I'll say morally ambitious things to, well, get the money you need. It's the sad truth, I guess.
yes, and some might be human nature related, but I don't think we can safely say it's more than half of it, because you have to consider all the things that's going around. And well, the problem with, let's say, the notion of free will is there's so much that you're not aware that is going on, that a thing like free will could never work.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
it's not a free will if you breathe, or if you want food. Your stomach says, well, I need food. There's no free will involved in that.
Alvin, that's very interesting, but shouldn't we stay on topic and
Yes.
talk about games and music?
Yes.
I'm just trying to segue the argument in the right direction here, so maybe I should start then. Let's talk about the game section first, and we'll move to music then.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what topic of games that you want to talk about?
Well, in the old days, you had a lot of games that were quite difficult to play, but not only that, because the so-called game developers had so much limitations around all kind of stuff.
Hardware and such.
Yeah, and
There was more imagination?
yeah, and
I could see that point.
the big numbers of money that were around were going those days.
Or nothing
not
compared to today,
yeah.
basically. And, well, that's also one of the many reasons why recently more and more AAA developers, or rather people behind AAA development, decided to leave for the indie industry. We saw that just recently with Irrational Games, the developers of Bioshock Infinite and Bioshock 1, I believe. They basically, well, sort of closed their doors and started to develop indie games with the remaining folks.
Yeah.
And that shows a precedent that people are having enough of the pressure involved and the politics involved.
I can now and I can also see why, because this market is quite
Poisoned?
yeah, and it's, well, there's a lot of abundance in almost the same games. You had the time
Same mechanics.
when a lot of game developers played safe and started to create their own first-person shooter.
Well, isn't that something that happens in all industries, where when something is successful, everyone wants their share of the pie?
Yeah, you see also on television when one program starts having success with some
Formula,
yeah,
some kind of
then
formula.
all those programs are
Trying to
trying
copy
to do
it.
the same things and fail eventually.
Yeah, because they, in their attempts to try and get money off of that idea, they forget what's important about it, what makes people like it, and that ends usually being their downfall, or making them not get much money or as much as they wanted.
Yes, it's mostly related to, well, that they expect a large number of money, but when more people create the same, you have to think like, well, he's cheaper.
That being said, though, the old days are not without their faults.
No,
Neither
of course
are
not.
they.
You had this game, TE or something.
E.T.
E.T.
Yeah, a very infamous example. That game was, from what I heard, it was garbage. It was incredible garbage, despite the fact that it sold rather well. It just didn't sell as much as they thought it would. As for my own example, I would like to give my own less known one. Is as much as I love the games, the Wing Commander games that I really love have basically not developed any new mechanics since the very first game. It's always the same stuff. And while sometimes it can be a good thing, the novelty starts to wear off when in the 5th entry you're still going to sweep by random sectors through jump points and shooting bad guys and doing the same shit all over again. So while limits definitely help innovation in some cases, in fact in a lot of cases, in no way do they make that game sacred, or that time period in which that happened sacred.
No, I mean, there is no such time where bad games didn't exist. But in the old days, you could, if you weren't satisfied with a game, you could bring it back. Now these days, with the so-called copyright thing, or you can rip it.
You mean with those
like
digital stores?
Yeah, but also physical stores. In the old days, you could bring your game back and get your money.
The reason that's no longer possible is and it is usually with PC games, by the way, that this happens, is because they're now tied to stores like Steam, Origin, Uplay, or whatever the hell is
Yeah,
is
or
on the
serial
internet.
numbers and
I mean, there are so many digital stores nowadays that I'm sometimes wondering why I even bother to buy a retail copy. I still do for other reasons, though. I am starting to do that less and less because they're disappearing more and more. The sections of PC gaming are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually they'll go all digital probably. But with console games, usually you can still bring them back. Although that's probably gonna end soon as well, in a generation or two, I think, because they wanted to do it with the Xbox One, for Christ's sake. They wanted to stop that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going into the direction where, well, the game industry,
Goes full digital?
yeah, not only that, but tries to bring a few things that are considered new.
And play safe for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not too sure if I would agree with that entirely. I mean, more and more money being poured into projects does incentivize them to play it safe, as they need those big numbers to ring it in, basically. But in no way does it mean that every game in the industry will be like that, nor will it mean that it will stay like that forever. I mean, some people are already speculating on a third video game crash, which a lot of people think would be a good thing for gaming, where it will basically shift to indie gaming entirely. That or AAA and indie would fuse in like some type of utopian friendship, you know? But I don't know, the future is uncertain on that one, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I sincerely hope it will end for the better for both us gamers and developers.
Now you have the problem with the Wii U, and the Wii U
Yeah, it's so sad it won't
might
fail.
be a flop or something. I don't think Nintendo is going to bankruptcy. I mean,
No, at worst they probably stop making consoles like they did with Sega. What Sega did, sorry. And they'll just go develop for third parties like Microsoft and Sony, which would be sad, but wouldn't be the first time something like that happened, and would be understandable. But they'll live. Yeah. Do you have another point?
yeah. When you play games like Ninja Gaiden or something,
The old ones.
yeah, also the new ones. Well, the
non-remastered versions.
The
The
2004
yeah.
version, the 2007 versions, the later ones. The last part, the Ninja Gaiden 3, was
You like the gameplay. I mean,
it was fun, but I don't think it could follow the philosophy of the maker itself.
It shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, the Japanese company sold out to an American one. I mean, the changes are immediately apparent. I mean, all of a sudden they go to America, which, from what I heard, never happened before in the other games. I played the DS version, and I can tell you it does not occur outside of Japan. I played a bit of the first game with you. I played a part of the second game. They're all in Japan as far as I know, because I saw sakura trees, old temples. So, yeah, it's already doing that is a mistake from the get-go.
I don't think it is as bad as people tend it to be, because you have to remember that the games before the first one were so good that if you have a game that's a little bit less exciting, it will be completely different. It will be completely bad.
Yeah.
You have that with the Dark Knight Rises.
It has a high standard.
The Batman Begins was good. Batman Dark Knight, the Dark Knight was very good, and the Dark Knight Rises was good, but it wasn't as good as the first one, and because the first one was so good, everybody expected
better. It had
very
a
high
legacy
standard.
to live up to, basically. But speaking of Ninja Gaiden, there's another thing you wanted to talk about, what I would like to segue in right now. DLC. Because the first one had DLC, which are now no longer accessible and can't even be used, even though they have been saved from the server. They're locked behind a ID code that requires a certain save that nobody has right now. And I wanted to talk to you about a conversation we had before about the ethics of DLC, as well as what I thought a rather funny point of view. I found it funny, but it's also interesting, about the difference between expansion packs and DLCs, and why people seem to be okay with expansion packs, but some people seem to hate DLCs when in some cases they can be rather similar in size, length, though some superficial distinctions are made, which I find to be completely unnecessary, but that's a point for another day. But you said that you like expansion packs. You have your StarCraft expansion pack right there,
Yeah.
and you hate DLC. You said it should be free, even if it's made after the game was already done and finished, or it should be 40 hours long and be $5 or something like that. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, like $10 packs.
For a game that's basically, what is it? Almost as long as the original game. If the game is 60 hours and the DLC is 40 hours, you want to spend $10 on the DLC, despite the fact that the game was 60 hours long and you spend $60 on that. Can you explain your point there?
Well, I think if a game company developer is like, well, we aren't actually quite finished with the game, and but we can bring a DLC out later. Then I think that their approach is completely different, because they're already keeping in their head, well, we can still bring a DLC and let grab the.
Well, you do know that it costs resources, time, and money to make them just like normal games.
Well, then just wait till you have finished it. Just like
No, I
Vista.
mean, that's not what I mean with that. Those type of DLCs exist. They're more the norm than the exception. And I have to admit, I have bought DLC like that, though I wish I never did sometimes, because yeah, they're just chopped off part of the game that they sell for $10. But no, I'm talking about the Burials at Seas, the episodes of Liberty City, DLC like that usually get released months after the game came out, that was worked on after the game was already done with, and are sold, and are usually much bigger in size because of that.
You didn't really need to play those in order to understand the story of the Force.
In the case of Burial at Sea is a sequel to Bioshock Infinite, and takes place before Bioshock 1, and it's basically an intermediary chapter between Infinite and Bioshock 1, and it's not entirely necessary, but it's crucial to end the chapter of Bioshock Infinite. So that's kind of a gray area there. It's a pretty long DLC I've played. One wasn't very long, but 2 I heard is much longer. And I personally love it when they do that. I applaud that, because it's like an expansion. It's just download only. Because if you want to talk about it that way, but Dragon Age Origin had an expansion pack. It was called Awakening.
Jongen. Nee, we zijn even bezig.
Even bezig.
Ja.
Can you please?
Alvin.
Thank you. Sorry for that. We're currently in a public area, and some people are opening doors, so we're closing them right now, because they're ruining the stream right now. But anyway, to get back to my point, Dragon Age Origins has the expansion called Awakening, and it was boxed, like it should be, if it's an expansion. But for the UK, they made it download only. Some legal matter, I don't know the details. But at that point, some people refer to it as DLC. What's your stance on that one?
Yeah, I think the term DLC just means, well, you don't download it from the internet. Well,
So
all the data you are accessing, you are downloading them.
So what is your opinion on it if they made an
Doesn't matter
expansion?
if you do it from a CD, because you download the data from the CD to your computer.
Yeah. So why do you object to DLC but not to expansion packs when in some cases the expansion pack is only digital? Like as I said,
But then it's a DLC.
well, yeah, technically it would be if you take the term literally. But as I said, and I kind of agree with you here, that it makes no sense, but a lot of people make the distinction between expansion pack and DLC because of two reasons. Probably old time's sake, and because there is a difference, though there is nothing that stops them from being interchangeable words to use. DLC are usually an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours at max. They are usually a couple of gigs only.
Or 15 hours.
No, that usually doesn't happen. That hardly ever happens. But usually they add. What?
Even if it's a story.
Yeah. They usually just. I mean, Mass Effect 3 had the Citadel DLC. It was a two-parter. That's how big it was on Xbox Live. Though you can on the PS3 and the PC, it was one part of obviously. It was, I think, 5 or 6 gigs or something, and was amounted to 5 hours of game time. It added a shooting area with all kinds of mini games. It added weapons, attachments, a new story, a temporal squad mate, I think. I'm not sure on that one. And it was $15, way overpriced by the way. But a DLC, an expansion pack is usually 15 hours at minimum, at bare minimum usually. They're usually not shorter than that. And they add more than the things I mentioned. They usually, in some cases, they add improvements to the engine, though DLC have been starting to do that as well. They add new story. They're usually an intermarried chapter between two entries, such as you can see with StarCraft there.
In fact, if you wanted to take it literally, you could say, well, this one is just a DLC.
Yeah, but then again, you also have disc-locked content, which is also DLC, and Capcom likes to not differentiate between those two, which a lot of people objected to, and so did I. But yeah, I personally think that people are arguing semantics when they are making that distinction, and I personally would not make it. But at the same time, during our conversation, you showed your hatred for DLC, but you liked expansions, and I'm just trying to figure out why that is.
I like it when I 15 hours or something.
Yeah?
Yeah, because, well, then you know.
More bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it's a couple of hours, well...
It's not worth it.
No, they could easily made it clean.
I'm not too sure about that. I mean, in the past, a good example to go back to StarCraft, it had the first one had maps of the month. You could download a pack of maps each month, and they did it for a year or 2, 3, I think. And most of them were not story related. They had a little bit of story just to explain the map's presence. Some of them, though, had actual story. They were multiple mission maps, and they are actually quasi-canon or canon in some cases. They were free. Also, they costed far less resources to make, because they could make multiple maps a month. They had usually a pack of, what was it, 20 or more maps. It was a large pack, because it was easy to make and didn't cost much. In the case of today's standards, though, you need voice actors, you need a lot of 3D artists, you need script writers, you need screenwriters, you need choreographs. In fact, in this day and age, they're more and more using motion capture, so you need actors, you need a lot of stuff. And even though it's only a couple of hours, you're spending a lot of money and time and effort.
What if I say, well, I saw a movie, I say to people, well, if you really want to know the story, you can buy
the
15 minutes of...
Well, what about movies that are chopped into parts then, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2? I mean, technically, the first part ends on a cliffhanger, and from what I understood, they, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, they recorded the whole movie, and then they cut it into pieces, kind of like what they did with Lord of the Rings.
That's still actually a bad approach.
It is, but would you sit in a theater for 6 hours?
Why not?
You would sit in a theater for 6 hours?
Yes.
I don't think the majority of people would do that, quite honestly.
If you watch a movie, and it's a couple of hours or 3 hours, you don't actually sense the amount of data that is brought to you, because the movies are made in a certain way that you're not aware of the time. So
yeah, but eventually you need to go to the toilet, you know.
4 hours or something.
The maximum one is 3 hours and 50 minutes, and that's the director's cut. That's not the movie edition. That's not the movie cut. The theater cut, I mean. That's not the theater cut. You never spend 3 hours in the movie theater when it came out. Trust me. But now I think we should segue into the music. Shall we do that, or do you have a few more points about?
I don't know if you want to let people know a couple of other things.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I made my points. But if you have more to say about it, then go ahead, shoot.
Well, what was the most innovative game that you ever played?
Me.
In your entire life.
Most innovative game I ever played in my entire life. That is one of the toughest questions I've had in quite a while, honestly, because, you know, it's like asking me what's my favorite dish of food. I don't know. I really don't know. I usually don't have...
Give it a try.
It's always fluctuating, but if I should take... In terms of gameplay or story, or both?
Both.
Both. Can it also be about interweaving the two together in an awesome way?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if we are talking about trying to take gameplay and story, interweaving them in a way that deepens your submersion and really makes you feel, I would go for the PSP title, game, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, purely for its end. And I know that some people don't like it. I really think game endings are important. In some cases they can make or break the game, for me. Not always, but a lot of times they do. And even though that game wasn't as great as I had hoped, considering that FF7 was an awesome game, from what I played. I haven't played a lot, but what I played was really awesome. I had high hopes for it, but it was your typical anime, slightly cheesy fare, up until the end. That end was so amazingly done in terms of suspense, drama, and gameplay mechanics that it redeemed the game for me entirely. Both before the credits, after the credits, and when the game went back to the menu, I was overwhelmed. Want to know what it was about?
I don't know if the audience...
No, I don't mean don't mean spoilers. I'm talking about the gameplay section. I'm talking about how it got interwoven. I will try to keep it as spoilerifically free as I can, but basically what happens is in the game you have something called a digital mindwave system, and it basically connects the people you met in the game with a bunch of numbers, and that way you can have spells, buffs, debuffs, summons. And during the course of the game, every time that happens, you can have a little short FMV scene, cutscene, whatever you want to call it. And it usually explains a couple of scenes and adds more context to them. But in the game, something horrible happens, and when that happens, or actually just before it happens, when a very important battle is being lost, that digital mindwave system starts to delete people while memories flash by, and the music is perfect. What's happening on screen really corresponds to what's happening on the digital mindwave system, and considering that it added all those scenes and improved your relationship with people as you did that, it really interwove the gameplay with the end, and that was an amazing feeling for me. And what about you? What was your best game you ever played in terms of either gameplay, story, or both, or how they got interwoven?
I think a game like called Messiah. I don't know. I don't think a lot of you guys are aware of the game. Or?
It's an old game, yeah. Are you sure you're not saying it's because of nostalgia?
No, it was actually quite unique. It wasn't something where you could say, well, I've played this before, which these days I can say a lot, but Messiah had this tension that you could take over any character you want, and if you shut down the wrong guy, well, you could play the game over again, because, well, let's say you kill the scientist, and he's the person he's the only person that can open that door. Well,
you have to start all over. Well, not to destroy the game or anything, or be not mean to you or anything, but that would actually be considered bad game design by modern standards, because that would anger a lot of people.
Well,
I mean,
it asks you to think about
yeah,
your actions.
but the problem is you have to think in a certain way, and if your way of thinking doesn't correspond with the game developer's way of thinking, you're screwed. Because what a lot of modern games do, even some bad modern games like Thief 4, they give you multiple ways of accomplishing your objective. Sure, it's limited, but at least you have more options available to you. Tools, different routes, stealth,
they give you a
run and gun.
They do give you hints from like, well, don't just kill the persons, you might need those. And if you do that, well, and you could save, but there was no auto save, so if you forgot to save, well, then you were like, oh.
That would be even more enraging.
But
you like that challenge, is that it?
What do you have when you have a power tool, and a piece of metal put into a giant brick of wood?
What happens?
Drilled. Then you're screwed.
But may I ask, the reason you think it's the best game in that retrospect is because you like the challenge? Is that it?
No, I like this kind of approach, that it wasn't just a game that was already done. It was it
was something unique, a unique type of gameplay.
I tried to find other games that had the same
idea
stuff going,
but there aren't many.
None of them seem to really gone that far. You could literally take over a prostitute, kiss a cop with let's say a big bang bazooka, and then you could take over that guy.
Yeah.
And that way you could.
Okay, so I think that it would be a good way now to segue into our last topic for today, which would be video game music. I myself love music in video games. In fact, back when I still was someone who really was into the Mass Effect games, I bought almost every album of Mass Effect 2. I got the album of Mass Effect 3 for the collector's edition. I don't own the music of Mass Effect 1, which isn't that great anyway, and it's confusing on iTunes because there are two versions of the same music, but with a euro or dollar of price difference, so I never knew what was what really. But I really loved it. It was amazing, it worked, and it was one of the most awesome pieces of music I had listened to in a long time. And yeah, that's what I have. As for other music, I happen to own the music to, I think it's Dragon Age as well. I mean, BioWare, if there's one thing they have done well and are still doing well, it's music.
Yeah, creating that cinematic view.
Yeah, basically, a good example would be Suicide Run of Mass Effect 2. It really gives you those thrills and that adrenaline punch and push to basically get to that end alive with everybody in your squad together and to try and survive in a dire situation. It really shows that feeling well. And I think that music in video games is just as important as in any other industry. In fact, it could be even more important in a way, because games are interactive and you need to do everything you can to immerse them into that experience. And in the case of games with choice, you could even give them audio cues about their given choice and how it will affect the world. And I really love how some developers decide to use music in games. It can be used in really awesome ways that I don't think many other, or maybe even any other piece of entertainment could use in exactly that same way. I love it. And speaking of which, one more thing. I know you haven't played StarCraft 1, but the remastered StarCraft music in StarCraft 2, give it a try. It's freaking amazing.
I believe you have played it through the game all the time.
Yeah, well, I played the first one here sometimes, that's true, but I just today selected the StarCraft music in the StarCraft 2, and it's not entirely the same. They remastered it, but not only did they remaster it, they modernized it. They added, since it's no longer limited to a certain type of bit rate or whatever it was that limited it to what it was back then, it's now completely I think it's full orchestra in some cases. They added actual instruments rather than I said virtual ones they tended to use in old games. It's familiar yet completely different. I love it. On to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of game designers know the importance of music and sound. I don't know if I think there's also a lot of the times when they use the music in a game or in a certain type of content you are feeling, and it actually bloats it sometimes. Sometimes
the music can ruin it if it doesn't fit.
You are aware of what you see. The image you are seeing are already very dramatic, and most of the times you don't need to add music to that, because if it's dramatic without music, you're going to ruin it with music.
Sometimes, but other scenes really need it, because otherwise it's gonna fall flat and feel too silent.
But you could also say, well, then
it depends on the scene though, because for example, in Gears of War 1 I think you got this from, right? That scene with Rom when he kills a guy, there's no music. Am I correct?
Yeah.
There's absolutely almost no music, there's just some background noise and some sound effects. That's it, right?
You also have this with his Dominic, you have this wife or something?
Yeah, well, it's definitely, I know that there's a technical term for it, but I forgot it, but it's definitely something that some people, some scholars, I mean, literary scholars think is a very important thing to do and should be encouraged to try and show, not tell, but not only with your story but also with your lack of music. And I personally think it should be done on a case-by-case basis. I mean, some scenes definitely will be ruined by music. Others, though, will really benefit from it. I mean, to give you an example, the end of Mass Effect 2 can be very dramatic depending on the outcome of what you did before. And if that scene had no music, in fact, even if the good ending had no music, that wouldn't have been nearly as exciting as what we got.
My teacher said, well, when you can't handle the video editing without music, you're probably not doing it right.
Well, that's their opinion. I personally think that some scenes would really not work.
Well, in the time when there were video films without music, or at least
yeah, they had to use their expressions more, and but even then they had to cheat because then they used text in between scenes to explain things more.
Yeah, but you also had this scary, or you had to be afraid of something for some kind of horror film, and
they would actually
you were frightened more because it was completely silent.
Well, yeah, but that's not to say that the movies that do horror movies or horror games with music are just jump scares. There are some very sophisticated horror games and movies that basically are not jump scares. In fact, they have little to no jump scares.
Most of them aren't scary these days.
Well, I tried what was it again? I tried this very scary game. It was called Haunted Memories, I think. It was originally a mod for Gmod, which used Slender, Slender, and they reskinned him to make him more original, and they made an original story. It's now an early access game. The first episode is free. It's scary as hell, and I can't play it, and it doesn't really lay on the jump scares too thick. And if you want a better example with no jump scares, it would be Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I haven't played it, but I've seen videos of people playing it,
a lot of people call
and it was really scary. Dead Space is scary in a different way. It's scary because of the jump scares, which is, as far as I'm concerned, cheating in horror. It's cheap, it doesn't stay with you. It's basically boring. I mean, I got pretty far into Dead Space because I stopped giving a shit about the jump scares. I literally played for a day and night straight, and by the time it was night, I no longer gave a shit about the jump scares. I didn't get scared anymore, and I got to chapter 6 in one go. It just lost all its novelty.
Second version of the game Turok?
What about it?
Turok Seeds of Evil version 2 was that on a PC. There was always this part where you walked behind a wall, and
you would expect some music and nothing came.
And I knew they were coming. I knew they were there, and still you got scared. I was like, "Fuck you!"
That's a good horror scene. Then that's really good if that's what happens. That's what horror games aim for, in many cases. But speaking of music, by the way, in horror games, that's very important.
Yeah, I think I don't know if Saw is a horror film, but the music does play a lot of the scenes. I mean, a lot of the sounds you are hearing is.
But to ask you a question regarding game music, do you own any video game music legally? I mean, did you get like some collector's edition with a disc on it?
No, I'm always I can download it.
Okay.
I'm an old Jew.
Yeah. Because weren't you going to get the collector's edition of StarCraft 2 which would have included that?
On the Pirate Store. I could remember.
I do remember you saying you wanted the that box. You wanted to buy that box.
Yeah, but I didn't have it or something, or it was too
Okay.
expensive to my taste.
Well,
And I was like, well, I'm not going to pay that kind of shit.
because I'm definitely gonna buy the Diablo 3 expansion collector set. I actually stopped buying collector sets because I consider them bullshit nowadays.
I do think that a lot of the StarCraft games and especially the Blizzard games are putting a lot of energy into the music.
Yeah.
Because the music creates the complete cinematic viewing. You are literally, if you hear the music, you're like, well, this game is big.
Yeah, in fact, in the case of the first game, and I know you can't really speak for that, but I can, it's, considering that it's so old and that the graphics were so limited, I mean, most cutscenes are really short and they are on point and they don't expose much exposition. I mean, the only scenes that are relatively long are usually those at the end of a chapter, episode I mean. It's really just the music and the things that happen in the map that explain the story, and they rely heavily on their music to basically give that mood. Because there's, for example, there's an episode, a mission where you're basically stuck, and there are a lot of Zerg surrounding you everywhere, and you need to hold out for 30 minutes until the Sons of Korhal come in. It's basically very similar to the mission where you in StarCraft 2 where you actually leave the planet. That one. It's very similar, but it's much more primitive. There are no complex cutscenes. It's just text, voice actors, video, face cams, and it's really simple, but it works so well. I have to say. I really like it.
And that's the music, beauty of music, but not just music, also a lot of the sound effects. When you play StarCraft, everything you do, every mouse click you do hear click, ching, 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 all those little sounds. If you turn down the sound, well,
it's just boring.
Yeah, it's like, well, this is kind of boring actually.
Doesn't it count for every game, or are there games you can play without sound? I wonder. Yes,
I have played games where I was like,
I can miss the sound.
Bother about the sound. Or sometimes the games have music that's like, oh, this is fucking annoying. But
okay. Because I do remember I saw that on the news a long time ago where they basically made a video game for the blind. They had a computer on their back, a toy gun in their hand, and the computer made all kinds of three-dimensional sounds, I think it was.
By the way, are we recording?
Yeah, it basically they put earplugs in or something, and the computer recorded where they were through GPS, and it basically said if they hit an enemy or not, because they couldn't really hear very well. In fact, it was also used for deaf people. I mean, blind. I mean, so people who couldn't see, he would tell them. People who were blind, deaf, he would basically how you say that? It would be visualized, I think, if I remember correctly, because they wanted to give gaming to people that were
disabled.
In a way, yeah.
Still gives them the chance to
experience something similar. Yeah, because I mean,
they're just normal people, and if they have the same kind of things they want to do.
I mean, if you're deaf, you can kind of play games because you can just put on the subtitles and play without sound, but it's not optimal. But if you have no eyes, you cannot play much. Different. So you really have all you have is that game basically, the computer on your back, the toy gun in your hand, and
even blind people. I would like to see how do blind people dream?
Well, I guess I don't know, but if you had eyes before that weren't born blind, I guess that their brain has the data from the past stored and works on it that way. Then again, their brain is a very powerful machine. I bet you have dreamed of stuff in your mind that's completely fictional and it looks real, right? I mean, it's a very powerful machine.
Yeah, but if there's completely no data about images, you might have some kind of visual effects in your brain, but nothing that we could consider our imagination. It's
Yeah.
completely different. But
But
they do dream, so
of course they do.
And-
Animals dream, so they do dream as well.
would they dream about sex?
What? Why even? Why is it even a question? Of course they would. I mean,
I think
they're humans like we are. But anyway, we're getting
do
off
they
topic
dream
here.
about the images about sexual intercourse?
I'm not gonna answer that because I'm not the person to ask. Ask a blind person. But anyway,
Well,
Elwin, wait.
grab a knife.
1 second, Elwin, because we're kind of going off topic here, and we had 2 topics to discuss. Those topics are basically done. Shall we end things here? Shall we wrap it up?
Well, we have yet another topic, the last one,
Which one? You didn't discuss that with me.
the Hankino subwoofer design.
You did not discuss that with me.
I did put it in the description, so.
That's not enough. I haven't seen the thing. I don't know what it is.
Well, you
What
were
it does.
supposed to ask noob questions, if you can do that.
Maybe we should save it for another stream.
What is the speaker? Ask that.
Elwin. I think it's better if we save it for another stream. I'll promise you we'll do that, okay? But it's late and the stream has been going on for quite long, so I think we should wrap it up and then we can
I'm going to grab that one
look.
and put it in front of the camera and.
I really think we should discuss this off air first before we continue. I mean, if you really want to do this, I want to get those questions sorted out, and you shouldn't say to me, ask this question, that's redundant. We really would have to discuss that off stream.
Well, I have told you. You weren't listening. That's different.
No, I'm talking about we need to have a list of questions which I can ask you. But we should really do this off stream, can we please?
Yeah.
And for now, say goodbye and then come back with this if you really want to.
Yes.
Okay?
Absolutely yes.
Okay.
Oh,
So-
that wasn't in the description.
It's okay, we'll edit that. Okay?
Okay.
So, do you have any closing words to say?
No, I would people that are interested in scientists and engineering. I have this book from Sir Hewitt. It's an international edition, the 9th edition, and it is called Physics for Scientists and Engineers. It's a quite some powerful book. Everything you need to know about modern world is probably put in there, but not in a sense of philosophical way. It's more like, well, equations and stuff. But you could probably make an equation on if you could have a relationship with a girl or not. Scientists have
Actually done that?
yes. So
what a sign then. No, okay.
so
But anyway, then I guess I'm gonna end it here. I'm Party Keepers,
and this is Mr. Weekend.
and we'll see you next time.
Have a nice day
Have a nice day.
or night or
Yeah, depending on where you are.
living.
Bye.
Bye.